What's happening, everybody? I'm Todd Tanner. This is Wrestling News Now. Check it out. I'm continuing the profiling and the story of the one and only, the Hot Rod, Roddy Piper. This will be the second video about Piper because it has a very long, interesting story. And I'm breaking it up probably maybe 2 or 3 videos. I'm going to make sure that I get it all in. Once again, would you hit like and would you hit subscribe to Wrestling News Now with your boy, Todd Tanner. Tell your friends about it. Put it in a group. Send it to everybody. You can help this sports program to go #1 here on YouTube. And once we get to that point where we can go live, you'll be surprised at the major interviews we're going to have and the people I'm going to have come on by. And we can do so much good with a wrestling news program. All right, let's get down to business on tonight. Continuing talking about the one and only, the Hot Rod, Roddy Piper. When I finished talking about Hot Rod in the first video, I talked about his stint in the National Wrestling Alliance territories and in the Mid-Atlantic territories and the Georgia Championship Wrestling in the Mid-Atlantic area. He feuded with people like Jack Briscoe, Ric Flair, Bob Bullet Armstrong, Dick Slater, Tommy Rich, and the infamous dog collar match with the one and only Greg the Hammer Valentine, which left Piper hearing impaired, losing about 70% of his hearing. Let's talk about Piper going into what then was known as the World Wrestling Federation. The year was 1979. Before entering the World Wrestling Federation, or the WWF, full-time in 1984, Piper wrestled 5 matches with the WWF under Vince McMahon Sr. in 1979 at Madison Square Garden. His first match in WWF, he defeated jobber Frank Williams on January 22nd. Before one match, Freddie Blassie stuffed Piper's bagpipes with toilet paper so they would not play in front of the golden crowd, and that's called ribbing in the wrestling profession. In 1983, WWF owner Vince McMahon contacted Piper, who insisted on serving out his contract with Jim Crockett before starting his WWF run in 1984. Piper debuted in the WWF as a manager because of the injuries he suffered during his dog collar match at Starrcade. He managed Dr. D, David Schultz, and Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff, but eventually Piper's run as a manager quietly ended and he started wrestling full-time. He was given his own interview segment called Piper's Pit on Championship Wrestling and Wrestling at the Chase. In 1984, starting a run of the segment that ended in 1987, during one Piper's Pit, Piper insulted. I don't know if this was for real, if it was scripted. I do know it was very demeaning and insulting at the time. So, during one Piper's Pit, Piper insulted Jimmy Snuka, Polynesian's heritage, and attacked Snuka by smashing him over the head with a coconut. Piper also insulted Bruno Sammartino during a Piper's Pit segment, which led to a feud that ended in a steel cage match, which Piper lost. Piper's next major storyline was with Hulk Hogan and also involved pop singer Cyndi Lauper. In 1985 MTV broadcasts The War to Settle the Score, which featured a main event match between Piper and Hogan, who was accompanied to the ring by Lauper, Captain Lou Albano, and Mr. T. This event set up the very first WrestleMania, which pitted Paul Orndorff and his former manager Piper against Hogan and Mr. T. Orndorff was pinned by Hogan when Piper's bodyguard, Cowboy Bob Orton, interfered and mistakenly struck Orndorff instead of Hogan. In Born to Controversy, Piper recalled how during the match he had to keep Mr. T busy to cover Mr. T's lack of wrestling ability from being seen by the fans. From this situation, Piper and Mr. T's real-life relationship became hostile, leading to the inevitable conclusion that they be put into a feud with one another on screen. Piper faced Mr. T in a boxing match at WrestleMania in 1986. in which Piper lost by disqualification after body slamming Mr. T. Following a leave of absence from the WWF, Piper returned as a face during a TV taping of Championship Wrestling on August 23, 1986 against A.J. Petrucci. As part of the storyline, the returning Piper was distressed to find his Piper's Pit segment replaced by the Flower Shop, a segment hosted by Adrian Adonis, who had also hired Piper's former bodyguard, Orton. Piper spent weeks, crashing Adonis' show and trading insults, leading to a showdown between the two segments that ended with Piper being assaulted and humiliated by Adonis, Orton, and Don Morocco, and the destruction of the original Piper's Pit, resulting in Piper's face turn and a construction of a more permanent Piper's Pit set. In response, Piper stormed the set of Adonis's show and destroyed it with a baseball bat. This led to the hair versus hair match at WrestleMania, which was billed as Piper's retirement match from wrestling before he left to become an actor full-time. Piper won the match. Wow. In early 1987, Piper's Pit also served as the backdrop for Andre the Giant's heel turn in challenging Piper's old foe Hulk Hogan for the WWF World Heavyweight Championship at WrestleMania 3, and Hogan ultimately accepting the challenge. In 1989, Piper returned from a 2-year hiatus. Although WrestleMania 4 was billed, WrestleMania 5 was billed as his return, he actually made his first appearance on March 19th in Denver, Colorado at a house show when he hosted a live Piper's Pit and interviewed Brother Love. Remember him? Remember Brother Love? Oh, my brother, Brother Love. 2 weeks later at WrestleMania 5, he did make his official return with another live Piper's Pit where he hosted down the smoking Morton Downey Jr. with a fire extinguisher. He made his return to the ring on May 12th, substituting for Jake Roberts and pinning Ted DiBiase on a house show in Los Angeles. Piper would gain several more victories against DiBiase that month and also against Randy Savage in June. After this, Piper co-hosted Primetime Wrestling from July 17, 1989 to December 25, 1989 with Gorilla Monsoon feuding with Bobby Heenan, Ravishing Rick Rude, and Brother Love. He would return to the show in 1991 as well. Piper returned to the ring when he interfered in Rude's Intercontinental Heavyweight Championship defense against the Ultimate Warrior at SummerSlam, costing Rude the title. The feud was heavily promoted on TV, and Piper would face Rude in many matches throughout the house show's tours, including steel cage and lumberjack matches. The feud was so prominent that a Survivor Series match was built around it, which saw both men a team captain and simultaneously be eliminated by count out during their brawl. The Rude's team would go on to win the match. The feud came to a head when the stipulation stated that if Piper beat Rude, Heenan would have to dress as Santa Claus for an episode of Prime Time. However, the feud would continue until March 1990, with Piper winning the majority of their matches throughout 1989 and 1990, including a win over Bobby Heenan. He then feuded with Bad News Brown, remember him? Who was upset at being eliminated by Piper at the 1990 Royal Rumble. Brown will go on, Brown will go before the match with half his face and body painted black, and also wrestle Bad News while painted this way. Bad News would take this display of blackface as being offensive behind the scenes. Subsequently, the match would end in a double countout, with the issue between the two never being resolved despite plans to the contrary. According to a behind-the-scenes interview, neither man was willing to lose to the other. In 1981, he supported Virgil in his feud against the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. Later in 1991, Piper was involved in a motorcycle accident. Very unfortunate, very. But was still present at the matches at WrestleMania 7 and SummerSlam. He renewed his feud with Ric Flair, and at the 1992 Royal Rumble defeated the Mountie for his first and only Intercontinental Heavyweight Championship. He lost it soon after to Bret Hart at WrestleMania 8. Following his title loss to Hart, Piper made a handful of appearances at television tapings for Wrestling Challenge and WWF Superstars. 4 Piper's Pit segments were recorded, 2 with Steve Lombardi and 2 with Shawn Michaels. None aired, and Piper disappeared from the WWF. He made his return playing the bagpipes at SummerSlam. To be continued. Wrestling News Now with Todd Tatum, profiling the one and only the Hot Rod, Roddy Piper. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.